The question I have is, what is compaction and how do you compact a granular soil like sand? Alright, let's start with conceptual understanding of soil compaction. Remember what soil is. Soil is basically a collection of soil particles with the void filled with air and some type of liquid. So the engineering properties of soil depends on how dense or loose the particles are. So here I have loosely packed soil and here I have densely packed soil. This soil is weak and highly permeable, whereas this soil is strong and less permeable. And this is what we need. So one way to get this from this is to densify the soil. This is what is called soil compaction, and this is the subject of this video. Yet there are other ways to improve soil, and we won't talk about them here. For example, you can make the soil by cementing the particles, and this is usually achieved through a process called grouting. So let's talk about densifying a granular soil like sand. Now remember, there is no cohesion between sand particles, right? And because of this property, it turns out that it's a lot easier to densify sand using some form of dynamic loading than static loading. So there are several field techniques based on this idea, and we'll talk about a few here. So here is one of the techniques called blasting. What you do in this technique is that you bury a predetermined amount of charge at a certain depth and blast it. And when this occurs, what happens is that the soil in a certain region around the charge is going to densify, and you will see a settlement at the ground surface. And the soil densifies due to two fundamental reasons. Number one, you are creating a vibratory loading in this region, and that densifies the soil. Number two, when the sand is saturated, this sand liquefies. It experiences a liquefaction. That also leads to additional settlement. And when there is liquefaction, the pore water pressure goes up and you will see water spurting out of the ground like this. And of course you will do this at predetermined intervals, both in this direction and also in the direction perpendicular to the paper, so that the ground kind of settles in a uniform manner. And of course it's not going to be perfectly horizontal, but you can always come back and flatten this using a construction equipment. So here's a summary of what I just said. Here's another technique called vibroflotation. So basically you have a vibrating probe that densifies the soil. So here's what you do. First you want to insert this probe to the desired depth. There's a mouth at the bottom of this probe and you can spray water through it. And when you do that, this part of the soil liquefies and it allows you to insert the probe easily. So once you reach the desired depth, you keep vibrating this for about 30 seconds. There's a little eccentric mass around here that vibrates the probe. And while you do that, you keep spraying water, and also you keep pouring more soil, more granular soil in the gap that is formed. So this part of the soil becomes dense. So once it's done, you raise the probe and then keep repeating the process. So here's a summary of what I just said. So here's a picture of the field vibroflotation unit showing the key features a bit more clearly. This technique is called dynamic compaction. From a fundamental point of view, this is as straightforward as it gets. So what you do is you lift a heavy weight like a wrecking ball but rectangular in shape, and then drop it. And the soil around the weight in a local region is densified. And you repeat this in a regular array like shown in this picture here. Here's a little summary of the procedure.